Listen closely. Some people spend years hiding their cruelty behind smiles. But today, the tables are about to turn. And one quiet woman is about to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. The lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and coffee. Yet beneath the normal hum of office life, a quiet tension lingered. Seb was there, in his usual charcoal suit paired with a midnight blue tie. His smile was soft and patient, but there was a quiet intensity behind his eyes, the kind that made you feel both encouraged and scrutinized at the same time. Nora's, waiting for you in the conference room, he said simply. I nodded, following him silently. The room was on the 27th floor, with walls lined with cherry wood panels, the long table beneath muted, overhead lights giving it the feel of both elegance and authority. At the head of the table stood Nora Patel, petite, sharp-eyed, and confident. She had an aura of precision, the kind that made you immediately trust she was 3 steps ahead in any situation. Mrs. Carter, it's a pleasure, she said as we shook hands. Her grip was firm but warm, like she knew exactly how much tension you carried without showing it. A thick file sat on the table, its tabs marked in blue and red, clearly organized for impact. Nora opened her laptop and spoke in a calm, deliberate tone. I've reviewed the full details on Devon Reilly Group. There are a few points you should know. Charts and figures appeared on the screen, debt ratios, revenue graphs, but she translated every number into plain English, ensuring I wasn't lost. The company is highly leveraged, she explained. They're operating with far more debt than is sustainable over the next 18 months, and their current building under Whitmore. Capital's full control is essential for their operations. If the lease is terminated, relocating will cost them over $200,000, not including damage to their reputation. I felt a chill, but remained silent. Seb's hand brushed against mine briefly, a subtle reminder that we were here for more than numbers. This was about fairness, accountability, and dignity. Nora flipped a page. We have 2 options. Option A, terminate the lease immediately. Option B, offer a new lease but on our terms. She slid a draft toward me. The rent would increase by 18%. The term would be shortened to 3 years, and a new clause, an ethics disclosure, would be added. I frowned at the term, and Seb gave me a small, reassuring nod. Nora continued, listing the requirements. A public apology to me in local papers and online. A commitment to ethical corporate conduct. Annual contributions to the Chicago Elder Justice Fund, and a scholarship in Harold, Carter's name for construction students. I stared at Harold's name, my heart both heavy and steady. And if they refuse? I asked quietly. Then the lease ends in 72 hours. No court needed, Nora replied calmly. Seb leaned closer, his voice gentle. Justice doesn't always need punishment. Sometimes it just needs a contract that demands accountability. I stayed silent for a long moment, imagining Camille, the wedding, row 14, and the humiliation I had carried for years. Now I had a chance, not for revenge, but for consequences. I'll sign, I said finally, my voice firmer than I expected. Seb's hand brushed mine again. Then it begins, Mabel. And this time, you are the one in control. Afternoon wind pressed against the glass outside. For the first time in years, I felt calm, as if the years of being overlooked were finally turning into action, into something meaningful. Tomorrow, the first step will be taken. But will they accept the terms? Or will the true test of accountability begin? The hours between signing and waiting felt heavy, but strangely freeing. I returned home, the city's noise below the window fading into a soft murmur. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to shrink myself to fit someone else's version of dignity. Sitting by Harold's photograph, I lit a candle. The flame flickered gently, throwing light across his smiling face. It was a quiet reminder that the strength I felt wasn't new. It had been nurtured by the love and lessons we had shared. 2 days later, my phone buzzed incessantly. Bryce's name flashed across the screen. 3 calls within 10 minutes. My chest tightened as I answered, bracing for confrontation. Mom, he said, voice hurried, almost panicked. You have to tell Mr. Whitmore to stop this. This is blackmail. I paused, listening to the familiar rush of his anxiety. Outside, sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, warming the old wood. Bryce, I said slowly, this isn't blackmail. These are consequences. There was a long silence, then a shaky inhale. They're asking for a public apology, a scholarship, and a nearly 20% rent increase. Mom, do you realize what this will do to the company? I understand, I replied, my voice steady. But this isn't about the company. It's about dignity, mine, yours, and the principle of fairness. Where was your dignity when they humiliated me at the wedding? Another pause, heavy and uncomfortable, filled the line. Finally, he whispered, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, I told him gently. Think, for the first time in your life, Bryce. You can't buy your way out of respect. You have to choose it or lose it. I pictured him as a child, the 8-year-old who promised he would never let anyone make me cry. And then the young man on my wedding day, silent when he should have spoken. Do you remember that promise? I asked softly. It's time to keep it now. The line went quiet. I ended the call, setting my phone down, feeling the strange mix of relief and apprehension that comes when someone finally has to face a truth they once avoided. I knew this wasn't just a legal battle. It was a turning point for every person who had ever treated me as less than I was. That afternoon, Seb invited me to a gallery in River North, a space filled with light and unfinished paintings for Whitmore, Capital's upcoming penthouse. We walked slowly through the abstract works, Seb silent, letting me take in the colors and shapes. Which one speaks to you? He asked finally. I paused in front of a canvas of swirling blues and whites, colors like the sky after a storm. This one, I said. It makes me feel like I can finally breathe. Seb nodded, understanding without question. Harold would have liked that, he murmured. For the first time, I felt the strange and wonderful sensation of standing at the edge of a decision without fear. I realized that choosing dignity over fear wasn't just a concept. It was a practice, and I was finally living it. The proposal letter has been sent, but will Devin really accept the conditions, or will I have to watch justice slip through my fingers? The morning of the proposal's deadline arrived with a strange calmness. Sunlight spilled over the curtains, soft and golden, as if the day itself understood the weight of what was about to unfold. I made tea, the steam curling around my hands like a quiet reassurance. Seb was beside me, calm as ever, his presence steadying the nervous energy in my chest. Then the phone rang. Mabel, put it on speaker, Seb said. My heart skipped as I answered, and the unmistakable voice of Richard Devon came through, measured, controlled, yet carrying an edge of tension I hadn't heard in years. Whitmore, this is to confirm we accept all your terms, he said. I could almost picture him gripping a mug, trying to mask the tremor in his hands. Every clause, the public apology, the scholarship, the fund contribution was acknowledged. Seb's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. This is it, he whispered. The moment they realize their arrogance has limits, let the weight of those words sink in. No one would go to jail. No one would lose freedom. Yet everyone would face the undeniable truth of what they had done. Every insult, every dismissive glance, every act meant to belittle me. All would now be visible, undeniable, and publicly recorded. When the call ended, a strange mix of relief and solemnity filled the room. Seb gave me a reassuring squeeze. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded, the quiet tremor in my hands telling a story words couldn't capture. It felt surreal, like standing at the edge of a threshold I had once feared to cross. Now stepping through with my head held high, Nora Patel had confirmed the logistics for the public apology. The next evening at the Chicago Children's fundraiser, Devin Reilly would stand on stage and acknowledge their wrongs, with the media present to witness the lesson of accountability. I pictured Camille poised yet trembling, forced to confront the consequences of her words in front of those she had once impressed with arrogance. Bryce would see me there, not hidden in the last row, but visible, dignified, and untouchable in my integrity. The city lights flickered as evening approached. Outside, the breeze carried the faint scent of roses from the garden, the same fragrance Harold had adored. I felt an unfamiliar lightness in my chest, the weight of years of humiliation, beginning to lift. I spent the rest of the day preparing myself not for vengeance but for presence. Presence meant no trembling voice, no shy glance, and no retreat. It meant standing fully in my own truth, letting the consequences of others' actions speak for themselves. When Bryce texted later that day, Mom, I'll be there for the announcement, I felt the first true shift in our relationship. He wanted to witness honesty, accountability, and courage, and for the first time, I realized he would finally see me as more than someone who endured. Tomorrow night, Camille will speak on that stage, and Bryce will see me as I've never been seen before. But will the public acknowledgement bring true closure or only open old wounds? The night before the fundraiser, I sat quietly by the window, the city lights reflecting softly on the glass. Seb was beside me, calm as ever, his hand brushing mine occasionally, a subtle anchor in the storm of my thoughts. I lit a candle in front of Harold's photo. His gentle smile seemed to hold a quiet encouragement, reminding me that dignity was not granted, it was claimed. Reviewed the proposal once more. Devin Reilly's acceptance of the terms meant more than legal compliance. It meant accountability. They would write the public apology, fund the scholarship in Harold's name, contribute to the Southside community programs, and carry out every action spelled out in the agreement. I felt a strange peace knowing that the moral weight of years of disrespect was finally being addressed, not through revenge, but through justice with consequences. My phone buzzed. Bryce. "Mom, this feels like blackmail," he said, panic threading his words. I took a slow breath. "No, Bryce, this isn't blackmail. These are consequences," I replied, steady. I reminded him of the way he had ignored my presence on the wedding day and how he had let insults pass without acknowledgement. I saw the pause on the line, the sharp intake of breath. For once, he was listening without defense. "I just want a deal," he finally admitted, his voice lower now, tinged with fear and vulnerability. I let out a small, bitter laugh. "You think this is about a deal? This is about choosing a side, Bryce? Not with money, not with convenience, but with conscience. Which side are you on?" There was silence, heavy as years of avoidance. Then a faint whisper. I don't know." "Then think," I said softly, "because this time, you can't buy or bargain with your mother's self-respect." Later, Seb and I walked through a gallery in River North, a preview of Whitmore Capital's new project. The glass walls reflected the skyline, a reminder of how far one could rise when fear no longer ruled decisions. Seb asked me to choose a painting for the space. I stopped in front of a canvas swirled in blues and whites. "This one," I said, sensing a breath of freedom in its colors. Seb smiled. "Harold would agree," he said, and I felt that familiar warmth, a silent approval, from the past guiding my choices in the present. That evening, I sat in my home, the quiet punctuated by the ticking clock. Bryce's messages had stopped, and I felt no urgency, no fear. I had done what I could. Now the rest belonged to the unfolding consequences. Tomorrow, I will walk into that room not as a shadow in the last row, but as a woman claiming her place. But when I face Camille in the crowd, will I be ready for the emotions that have long been buried? The morning of the fundraiser, the city stretched beneath a pale wash of sunlight. The lake shimmered faintly, a quiet promise of a new beginning. Seb arrived right on time, his car gliding through the gates of the country club. I held my small bag close, heart steady but alert. A sense of anticipation mingled with a whisper of fear. Today wasn't about confrontation. It was about witnessing my own story, finally spoken aloud. Inside the hall, polished surfaces gleamed under soft lights. The air was rich with perfume and low hums of conversation. For a fleeting moment, I felt like I had stepped into another world, the world that had once excluded me, mocked me and dismissed me. But now I wasn't a ghost in the room. I was someone who belonged in her own right. Seb gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, inhaling slowly. It was time. As we moved to the front row, I noticed familiar faces. Women who had whispered behind my back at past events glanced in my direction, their expressions unreadable, cautious. Men who had once treated me with polite indifference now looked, just looked, as if seeing me for the first time. Bryce sat to my right, shoulders tense, hands clasped tightly. Camille was beside him, her emerald dress immaculate, but her eyes betrayed the tremor of nervousness. The host called the crowd to attention, and a hush fell over the room. Richard Devon stepped onto the stage, voice measured, almost fragile beneath the bright lights. He spoke, acknowledging a moment of accountability, offering a public apology. Camille's voice followed, clear and trembling, admitting the wrongs of the wedding day, confessing the pain she had caused me, and confessing the humiliation she had thoughtlessly inflicted. The room was silent. No applause, no whispers, only the weight of truth filling the space. I stepped forward, accepting the handheld mic, My voice was calm and steady. "I acknowledge your apology," I said. Not forgiveness, not relief, just acknowledgement. For the first time, I claimed my voice and my dignity in front of the crowd that had once ignored me. Camille lowered her head, tears spilling, while Bryce finally lifted his eyes and met mine, seeing me as I had always hoped to be seen, not just as a mother enduring, but as a woman standing tall. The applause came slowly and genuinely, and the cameras began clicking again. I felt Seb's hand brush mine gently. Outside, the night had settled over the golf course, lights twinkling like stars caught in the grass. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, a serene warmth filling me. For once, I felt I was walking into my own story, no longer in the shadows of other people's judgments. Tonight, the apology is spoken. But what will Bryce do with the truth he's finally facing? Will our bond survive the weight of all that has been buried? The evening after the fundraiser felt lighter, almost surreal. The city's lights shimmered against the lake like scattered diamonds. I sat in my quiet room, reflecting on the moments of truth, the weight I had carried for years finally lifting. Seb's text arrived. "I'll pick you up at 6. Don't be late." I replied simply, "Bring the signed contract. I want to see it in our hands." His confirmation came instantly. "And so will I." A small smile curved my lips. For the first time in decades, I felt the horizon of my life had expanded, no longer blocked by fear or humiliation. The car glided through the city streets, Seb beside me quietly, letting me absorb the calm of this unusual night. The fundraiser had ended hours ago, but its echoes remained vivid in my mind. Camille's trembling apology, Bryce's tearful recognition, and the room holding its breath at the confession of truth. Every word spoken had shifted the air, not with anger, but with clarity. Tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity restored, about finally claiming my rightful place in the story of my own life. Once home, I sat with a pen and a blank page. I wrote not for anyone else, but for myself, a silent declaration of the life I had reclaimed. My hand trembled slightly, yet the words were firm. I lived too long in silence, letting the weight of others' judgment define me. Today I choose my worth, not because anyone says so, but because I believe it. I folded the page carefully and tucked it into Harold's old notebook, a quiet homage to the life we had built together, the love that had anchored me even when the world tried to pull me under. 3 weeks later, a large bouquet appeared at my doorstep, pristine white lilies with a small card in Patricia Devon's handwriting, an offering of peace. I smiled softly, feeling the odd release of letting go while still holding my ground. I called the local children's hospital and requested that these flowers be sent to the pediatric nurses who cared so deeply for young lives. Relief spread through me like sunlight breaking through clouds. Later, an email arrived from Nora Patel. Devon Reilly had completed the first year of their commitments, scholarships, community programs, and contributions to the Southside initiatives. I read each line slowly, absorbing the reality that justice had been transformed into meaningful action. It wasn't a battle of pride anymore. It was a continuation of fairness, and purpose. Bryce's call that Friday evening was gentle and careful. "Mom, I'd like to invite you for dinner." "Just family," I agreed, knowing this was the quiet shift that comes when change is genuine. That evening, as I walked into his house, the warm glow of the room reminded me that respect can heal spaces once cold with judgment. Bryce guided me to my seat at the center of the table, the subtle gesture of acknowledgement more powerful than words. Rehook. Family is showing signs of healing, but can years of unspoken pain be fully mended in a single dinner? And what choices will Bryce make moving on forward? That evening, the house felt almost unfamiliar, yet comforting. Bryce's gentle presence softened the edges of old tensions. I glanced around. The familiar photos of Harold, the books on the shelves, the small trinkets that had survived time and neglect. Everything seemed smaller in Bryce's eyes, as if the grandeur of appearances had faded in comparison to the weight of truth I had carried all these years. He sat across from me, voice low, hesitant, yet sincere. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said finally, not as an ending, but as a beginning. I didn't respond immediately. The silence stretched, carrying the gravity of years spent in misunderstanding. Bryce continued, words spilling with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "I've been trapped, trying to maintain appearances, living by standards that weren't mine. afraid of failing. And in doing so, I forgot the person who mattered most. I forgot you. His hands were clasped together, knuckles white. I saw a man stripped of pride, facing the consequences of his own fear. I leaned back, letting the truth sink in. Bryce, I said softly, pressure is universal. But respect isn't an accessory. You wear at a party, it's a discipline you carry every day. You can never diminish yourself by honoring others, but you can become small by forgetting that. He bowed his head, absorbing the weight of my words. His voice returned quieter, almost a whisper. I want to change, Mom. I just feared you'd never forgive me. I exhaled slowly, the tension in my chest easing. Forgiveness isn't a switch, I replied. It's a journey. If you truly wish to walk it, I won't close the door. But there are 2 rules. First, don't reach out of obligation. Reach out because you care. Second, the next time there's a family gathering, make sure I'm included as a person, not a symbol. Bryce nodded, relief softening his features. I promise, he said quietly, because I want to, not because I have to. The room settled into a warm, unspoken calm. Outside, the garden stirred gently with the wind. Rustling rose petals Harold had once tended with care. I imagined him smiling at the scene, proud that the family he cherished was beginning to understand respect and dignity anew. Later, an email from Nora Patel confirmed that the Harold Carter Scholarship had officially launched. The first round of students would receive the support promised years ago, and the reading corner for Southside children was operational. It wasn't just my victory anymore. It was a legacy taking root. That night, Camille sent a message. Mom, I read about the scholarship. I think I understand now. If you allow, I want to begin anew. I paused before replying, carefully choosing each word. The door opens when you are ready to live differently, not sooner, not later. Then I set the phone down and let silence fill the room. A companion rather than a void. Rehook. Bridges are beginning to rebuild. But can Camille and the rest of the family truly grasp the weight of respect and humility? Or will old patterns resurface? A few days later, Seb invited me to see the new Whitmore Capital project, a towering glass structure near downtown Chicago. The elevator rose smoothly, and as the doors parted, the city spread beneath us, streets and rooftops stretching like a patchwork of memories. Seb gestured toward the skyline. This floor will house a community education and arts center. I want your input, maybe even a part you'd like to lead. I walked. Along the glass corridor, light spilling through, reflecting off the polished surfaces. Everything shimmered, yet for the first time I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt capable, even inspired. I paused at a corner where the city's reflection met my own. A thought struck me. Every project, no matter how grand, needs a soul. I want a reading corner, I said, turning to Seb. A place where children on the south side can explore books and imagination, even if they don't have access to a library. His eyes lit up, the corners crinkling with that familiar warmth. Perfect. We'll call it the Harold and Mabel Reading Corner. My throat tightened. The name felt like a bridge between past and future, honoring Harold while giving my own efforts weight. As the sun dipped, painting the city in amber and rose, Seb asked softly in the car, October. I have a project in Tuscany. Will you come with me? Italy. I laughed lightly, incredulous. I hadn't traveled far from Chicago in over a decade. Yet, as I watched the lights flicker below, I realized fear had always been a shadow in my life. Fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of insignificance. And now, standing in the light of my own choices, I felt that fear shrink. Yes, I said, soft but certain. Seb squeezed my hand, the warmth grounding me. I knew you'd say that. Back home, I sat at my familiar table, pen in hand, notebook open. I wrote quietly, for no one but myself. I've lived too long in silence, too long fearing the judgment of others. Today I recognize my own worth, not because someone declares it, but because I choose to believe it. I folded the page and tucked it into Harold's notebook, alongside his old list of rose varieties. Outside, the breeze carried the first chill of fall and the scent of late-blooming flowers. I watched the leaves sway, realizing for the first time in years that the future didn't frighten me. It felt open, quiet, and warm, the morning after a storm when the sun finally touches everything. 3 weeks later, a large bouquet appeared at my door. White lilies, arranged carefully, a card signed Patricia Devon. I paused, feeling the chill of past grievances, then made a quiet decision. I called the local children's hospital, asking that the flowers be sent to the pediatric nurses who still cared with kindness. When the staff agreed, I felt an unexpected relief. A stone set down in its rightful place. With the past confronting her and the future stretching ahead, Mabel begins to realize that true dignity extends beyond personal victories. Can she now fully reclaim her life while letting go of the old shadows? That Friday evening, Bryce called. His voice was hesitant, careful, almost fragile. "Mom, I'd like to invite you to dinner at my place. Just family." I paused, sensing the quiet sincerity in his tone. For the first time in years, it wasn't an obligation, a demand, or a performance. It was an offer of connection. I agreed, and as dusk fell, I arrived at his house. The warm glow of lamps greeted me, and for a moment I paused at the doorway. The atmosphere was calm, gentle, nothing like the tense, polished hostility I remembered from before. Inside, the long dining table was set simply but thoughtfully. Bryce guided me to a seat right at the center. "This is yours," he said softly, pulling out the chair with care. My eyes drifted to the seat across from me, where a single white rose rested on the back. Bryce's voice broke the quiet. "I think Dad should be represented too, even if just by this flower." My throat tightened. He always believed a table is only truly warm when everyone is respected, I whispered, touching the delicate bloom. The meal was humble. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, red wine Harold would have favored. But its simplicity made it feel sacred. Laughter rose gradually, shy at first, then spilling naturally as stories flowed. I listened to Bryce's voice, no longer commanding, but open, reflective. It was a son I hadn't seen in years, stripped of the weight of expectations and pretense. Beside me, Seb smiled quietly, eyes filled with reassurance, his presence a reminder that support sometimes speaks louder than words. After the plates were cleared, Bryce leaned forward, hands clasped, head bowed slightly. "Mom, I'm sorry," he began, his voice low, almost trembling. "It wasn't a closure. It was a beginning. I've been under pressures you couldn't have imagined, keeping appearances, living by rules that weren't mine, trying to shield my wife and myself from scrutiny. In that, I forgot you. I forgot who I am." Silence hung between us, heavy but honest. I replied softly, "Bryce, I understand pressure, but respect isn't a decoration at parties. It's a discipline for living. You can never grow small by treating others with dignity." He nodded, fingers entwined. "I want to change, Mom. I want to do better. I feared you wouldn't forgive me." I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of years lift slightly. Forgiveness isn't a gift handed over. It's a process. If you're willing to walk that road, I won't close the door. His eyes brightened with hope. I continued, my words deliberate. 2 rules. Don't call out of obligation. Call because you genuinely care. And when there's a family meal, invite me to the same table as those who belong, not as an afterthought. He promised, quietly, because he meant it. As Bryce begins to rediscover the bond with his mother, Mabel feels the first stirrings of a family, reconciled, but can years have passed? Wounds truly heal in the warmth of one evening? The evening air outside was crisp, carrying the faint scent of roses from the garden Harold once tended. I watched the petals dance in the breeze, a quiet reminder that life keeps moving, even after storms. Inside, the warmth of the dining room lingered like a soft embrace. Seb sat beside me in silence, letting the moment settle. There was no rush, no pressing words, just the calm that follows the first true acknowledgement of respect and love. Later that night, I received an email from Nora Patel. My heart lifted as I read each line. The Harold Carter Scholarship had been officially established. Devon Reilly had completed its first funding, and the community programs were all launched on schedule. The work we had fought for, the dignity we demanded, was now active, tangible, a living tribute to Harold's memory. I whispered his name, feeling the weight of loss shift into something meaningful. "Harold," I said softly, "your life continues to inspire change. You're still guiding the world even now." Days passed with a sense of quiet accomplishment. Bryce called again, this time with a gentler invitation. "Mom, I'd like to meet with Camille. Not about work, not about appearances, just about us." I smiled faintly, feeling the cautious opening of a door long closed. I typed back, firm yet measured. "Not yet, Camille. When I'm ready, I'll reach out. The decision was mine alone. For the first time in decades, my boundaries felt respected, my choices entirely my own. Then Seb invited me to the new Whitmore Capitol project, a glass tower near downtown Chicago. As the elevator rose, I watched the city stretch out below, the river slicing through the streets, rooftops glinting in the sunlight, memories interlacing with present reality. Seb pointed toward the upper floors. This will be a community space, arts, education. We want your input. Walking through the wide glass corridors, the light poured in, painting everything with possibilities. I suggested a free reading corner for children on the south side, a place for stories, learning, and imagination. Seb's smile was wide, approving. Perfect. We'll call it the Harold and Mabel Reading Corner. I felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, joy, and quiet triumph. A building shouldn't just reach skyward. It should carry a heart, and together we had given it one. That evening, as the sun sank behind the skyline, Seb spoke softly in the car. In October, I'll be in Tuscany for a project. Will you come with me? I laughed quietly, the sound light, unfamiliar. Italy, after more than 10 years confined to Chicago? Fear had always been a shadow in my life, lingering like a quiet warning. But now it shrank in the face of choice. I'll go, I said, my voice steady, sure. As Mabel prepares to leave her city-bound life behind for the first time in over a decade. The horizon of Tuscany beckons. But will the journey beyond Chicago reveal the courage she's only just begun to claim? The night settled over Chicago like a velvet cloak, soft and unassuming. I sat in my familiar room, pen in hand, staring at the blank page before me. I didn't intend to send these words. They were for me alone, a private reckoning. Slowly my hand moved, tracing thoughts that had been buried for years. I have lived too long in silence, too long fearing the judgment of others. But tonight, I remember my worth, not because anyone else says so, but because I choose to believe it. I folded the page carefully and tucked it into Harold's old notebook, the one where he had once listed rose varieties he wished to plant. Outside, the first chill of fall slipped through the window, mingling with the scent of the garden's flowers. I stood and breathed it in, a quiet acceptance settling deep in my chest. Fear no longer felt like a shackle. It had become a distant echo, replaced by the steady rhythm of self-respect. 3 weeks passed, and one afternoon, a large bouquet appeared at my door. White lilies, elegant and precise, accompanied by a small card in familiar handwriting. Patricia Devon. A faint chill ran through me at the recognition. Yet instead of anger, I felt relief, a strange lightness, as though a stone I hadn't known I carried had been set down. I called the Children's Hospital in Chicago, wanting these flowers to be a gift for the nurses in pediatrics. Please, tell them it's from someone who still believes in kindness, I instructed. The staff's gratitude echoed across the phone, and I allowed myself a small smile. Later, an email from Nora Patel confirmed. The first year of community. Commitments had been fulfilled. The Harold Carter Scholarship, the fund for the South Side, the public service programs, all launched as agreed. I pictured the first students receiving scholarships, children opening books in the reading corner Seb and I had established. This wasn't just a legal victory. It was the continuation of fairness, a circle completed with meaning and action. That Friday evening, Bryce called. "Mom, I want to invite you to dinner. Just family," he said, voice careful, measured, like someone walking on thin ice. When I arrived at his home, the warmth of the house immediately set me at ease. Bryce guided me to my seat at the center of the table, pulling out my chair with a gentle smile. A white rose marked the place where Harold would have sat. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, red wine, no pomp, no pretense, just stories and laughter, growing organically like sunlight through leaves. For the first time in years, I ate without the weight of expectation pressing down. As Mabel steps into this newfound peace, the lessons of dignity and respect begin to ripple outward. But will Camille truly be ready to face the truth she once ignored? The following morning, the soft October light spilled through my window. I heard a car at the gate and looked up to see Bryce stepping out. No luxury cars, no chauffeur, no grandeur, just him in a wrinkled dress shirt, hands in his pockets, looking worn but real. I opened the door before he could ring the bell. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly, voice stripped of the executive polish and defensive walls I had known. I nodded. a gentle smile touching my lips. "Come in, son." We settled in the living room with cups of tea. The house, unchanged over the years, felt smaller in his eyes, yet this time I saw only quiet reflection where judgment once lingered. After a long pause, Bryce spoke. "Mom, I'm sorry. Not to end things, but to begin again. I lost sight of what matters. I let pressure, appearances, and fear blind me to the most important thing. You and who I am meant to be with you." I listened, silent, letting the weight of his words sink. "Bryce," I said slowly, "respect isn't a decoration for show. It's a discipline for living. You never become poor by respecting others, but you risk becoming small if you lose it." He bowed his head, fingers entwined. "I understand. I want to change, Mom, and I hope you'll walk with me, if only a little." I exhaled slowly, soft and deliberate. Forgiveness is a process, not a gift. But if you are sincere in your actions, I won't close the door. 2 rules. 1, speak from your heart, not obligation. 2, when we gather as a family, make sure everyone has their rightful place at the table. Bryce's voice wavered with hope. "I promise, Mom. Not because you demand it, but because I want to." That evening, another message arrived from Camille. I read about the Harold Carter Scholarship. "I understand now. If you allow it, I want to start over." I typed back firmly. "The door opens only when you are ready to live differently, not before." I packed a small bag, passport, and travel journal. Tuscany awaited. Chicago had been the place where I reclaimed my dignity, and now the world felt open, full of possibility. I looked out the window, feeling the October breeze slip across my face. For the first time in years, I didn't just exist, I was living in the front row of my own life. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing, standing tall and reclaiming respect. If my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support allows me to bring more stories of courage and dignity into the world. Remember, your voice matters, your self-respect is priceless, and it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Share your story in the comments. When was the moment you realized your worth? Let's inspire each other to reclaim our seats in life.